And here with me to talk about the Washington football team is longtime fan David Cabrera. David, thank you for being on the show. I really appreciate it, taking your time out of your busy schedule to talk about this team, which tends to toy with the emotions of their fan base a lot.
Been toying with my emotions for 20 plus years. So my dad even longer.
That is an interesting story. And I know you said it runs through the family. One of the things I wanted to ask you, how did you become a fan of the Washington football team / Redskins / Burgundy and Gold / as I call them, the Teamers? How did that start?
So it started back in 99, which coincidentally enough was Dan Snyder's first season owning the team. And ever since, the team has just gone. But anyway, 99 was a pretty good year. They won the division. And what sealed, weirdly enough, what sealed my fate as a fan was the playoff game against Tampa Bay. That's like the one game that I remember vividly when I was that young. So we're talking about 99. So that game was like January 2000. So I was 7. And that's probably like one of the first football games that I remember vividly. And I just remember they had a chance to, I think, tie or win it. And it was a bad snap. And I remember sitting there with my dad after the game, and I was like, man, this is how it feels. This sucks, but hey, this is awesome. Hopefully we get to do this next year. And waited not a very long time, but had to wait until Joe Gibbs came back to experience playoff football again. So
it makes me think of being an Orioles fan in 1997. I'm thinking, that run, the Indians knocked him out, and, playoffs are a crapshoot. I'm like, yeah, they'll be back next year. And then it was 15 years till they made the playoffs. But, that's how it is with any long-suffering fan base of any sport, where you think they're right on the precipice, they're going to be back better than ever, and then there's so much futility in between those moments. But to you, standing out, what is your most memorable moment as a fan of the Washington football team?
Man, part of me wants to pick either the 05 or the 07 seasons, just because of those miraculous playoff runs, run toward the playoffs, especially 07 with the death of Sean Taylor. But the 2012 season was exciting. I mean, 3-6 was much like this season. He started 3-6 and then, reeled off 7 straight wins to get to the playoffs. But, that being RG3's rookie year and him being drafted number 2 overall and him starting right away and having success. And then, unfortunately, being injured in the Baltimore game. And then he came back and played decently enough on one leg. And then the game against Seattle, thought we had that game won. And then he messed up his knee again and ultimately tore his ACL. And then the defense couldn't stop Russell Wilson. As far as most memorable year, 2012 really sticks out to me simply because of RG3. And I can't forget Alfred Morris. Alfred Morris was balling that year. And the defense was so-so, but they made enough great plays. I mean, the Thanksgiving game against Dallas stands out to me as well. So, yeah, the 2012 team for sure.
Expectations coming into the season, again, reeling off a winning streak to making to the playoffs. Everybody can say what they want about that finale against the Giants, but the fact is they made the playoffs and they gave Tampa Bay a scare. Taylor Heineke really coming from obscurity and starting in place of Alex Smith and leading them to a really close defeat. I know no one ever wants to take moral victories into account, but really, there's a lot of thoughts and momentum going into that season. But what were you expecting coming into the year? Did you think it was a fluke? Did you think, okay, we won it in a division where Philadelphia was bad, the Giants were horrible, Dallas was missing their quarterback? What were your thoughts on the season?
I knew that Dallas was going to be back simply because Dak was back. And anytime that Dak is the quarterback and he stays healthy throughout the season, Dallas just has success. I mean, it's been proven every year that he's been healthy. So as far as expectations for the teamers, as you like to call them, I was thinking like 9-10 wins. I didn't think last year was a fluke. I thought the defense, especially with pieces like William Jackson and Jamin Davis in the draft, were only going to add to the talent on that defense. And then offensively, I know there were question marks as far as a quarterback, but I thought that there was enough talent at running back with Gibson, Terry McLaurin, who's a superstar, and with Logan Thomas at tight end that no matter who was back there at quarterback, they were going to have success. And the first 9 games of the season proved me very, very wrong.
Was there a particular point in the season that you were confident that Washington's going back to the playoffs? Was there a particular game? Was there a particular moment that made you optimistic?
These past 2 games against Tampa Bay and Carolina have slowly brought up my level of optimism. After the Broncos game, my expectations for the season were very low. I was thinking maybe even 2022, we need to start looking at quarterback and getting rid of the offensive and defensive coordinator. But whatever they did during the bye week just has paid off in spades these past 2 games. I mean, limiting Tom Brady and that Buccaneers attack that I think besides Dallas, I think they were like the number 2 scoring offense in the league, and the defense was able to shut them down. And most of that game, they didn't have Chase Young, who tore his ACL. And offensively, they were able to run the ball, and Taylor Heineke was able to pick his spots, and they were able to duplicate that again against Carolina. And I think that was a formula that worked for them last year, and I was hoping they would get back to it. And these past 2 games, they've just relied on the run and have just kept big plays to a minimum. They kept everything in front of them. So
what was the point in the season where you were about to say it's a code red game, as taking the words from Jay Gruden?
Gotta love Jay. The game that was really a code red game was the Broncos game. They just didn't have any life. I mean, the defense was playing well, and offensively, anytime they got inside the red zone, they just couldn't do anything. And Taylor Heineke was airmailing passes all over the field, and they just would not stick with the run. I didn't understand it. You got to run the ball in order to set up the pass. I mean, that's a tried and true statement. So my sentiment after that Broncos game were very low as far as them having a chance to make the playoffs or any type of noise going into the second half of the season.
In the case that Washington gets hot again, makes the playoffs, who do you feel they match up the best with in the NFC?
Match up the best with? Let's see. So if they were to make the playoffs right now, they'd be the 7th seed. I think even though they've gotten hot, they match well with Tampa. They match well with Tampa Bay. That's the one team that, for whatever reason, gives Tampa Bay fits. Well, besides New Orleans, they have a defensive line, even though they don't have Chase Young and Montez Sweat, that can get to Brady. If their corners can stay physical with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and all them guys, defensively they can win. And I know Tampa Bay has a very, very stout. They're very stout against the run, but in the past 2 games that they've played Washington, we've had success running the ball on them, and Taylor Heineke has made enough plays to win the game. And when you think about Logan Thomas and Curtis Samuel coming back to an offense that's propelling up, that's on the upward slope, that's exciting. And as far as a team that they match up well with, I would have to say Tampa Bay. And, it's going to raise a couple of eyebrows. But again, in the playoffs last year and the game this season, Washington has played them pretty well.
Who in the NFC playoffs would scare you as a Washington football team fan? I know close calls against Green Bay. A lot of these other teams don't look as invincible as people may think. But to you, who gives you the scares? Is it Dallas? Is it the Rams? Is it the Cardinals?
The Cardinals. The Cardinals scared the bejesus out of me. Cliff Kingsbury is very innovative. Kyler Murray is going to come back into the fold. He's just a dynamic player, running the ball, passing the ball. DeAndre Hopkins, Nuke, my goodness, that guy's a baller. AJ Green, Rondell Moore, Zach Ertz, who in Philly gave Washington so many nightmares. And then defensively, they got so many ball hogs, most of them underrated. When people think of the Cardinals defense, you think of Budda Baker and, on the D-line, Chandler Jones. But, there's some unheralded guys in the secondary. But as far as one team that I'm scared to play in the playoffs would be Arizona. And if we get that 7th seed, and we have to go to Arizona, that'd be a tough task for sure.
It's been a part of the Washington football team culture basically since the early 2000s. Struggle out of the gate, maybe be mediocre, get to middling levels, and then come week 8 or 9, start running on a streak. It happened during Joe Gibbs. It happened during Mike Shanahan. It happened during Jay Gruden. It happened last year with Ron Rivera. What is the issue that causes them to start out slow out of the gate and then have to play catch up for the rest of the year?
It's just, my goodness. Well, in the Joe Gibbs years, it's just been slow starts offensively, just trying to, and I think overall, just slow starts offensively have just plagued the team. And too much has been asked of the defense. I mean, this year it was just a complete garbage fire on both sides of the ball. I don't know what happened there. But as far as historically, Gibbs, Shanahan, Gruden, and now Rivera, there just has to be a way to find some sort of consistency offensively. If you're going to run the ball, run the ball. If you're going to pass the ball, don't pass the ball all the time. You're not the Rams or the Buccaneers or one of these offenses that, you can pass the ball around the yard and you have a quarterback that's, top tier that can do that for you. So as far as what to do next season to get off to a better start, just keep things simple offensively. Just run the ball. And if it doesn't work out, try to get creative, but not creative to the point where you're committing penalties or doing dumb stuff that puts your defense behind the 8 ball. So that's my answer.
Going to the predictions for the Super Bowl. Who do you have coming out of the NFC? Who do you have coming out of the AFC? Who wins it all, and what's the final score?
As far as the NFC, until this man retires, I'm going to pick Tampa Bay from the NFC. They've gotten on quite a good streak here. I mean, yesterday against Indianapolis, I was able to catch the last bit of it. But there's just something about having Brady under center that just galvanizes the whole entire team. I mean, Fournette, 4 rushing touchdowns. The defense was able to shut down Jonathan Taylor for a majority of the game. So as far as the NFC, Tampa Bay. AFC, whew. Part of me wants to pick Kansas City simply because I feel like they're back. Patrick Mahomes has made some adjustments. He's tried to make the game simple offensively. Defensively, they come alive. Chris Jones is a monster. He's an underrated pick for me as far as Defensive Player of the Year. So right now, November 29th, I would have to go with a Super Bowl rematch of Tampa Bay and Kansas City. And a final score would be I think Kansas City gets the revenge this time. And I think the score is going to be 35-30.
That is a close one, and I know that Patrick Mahomes has to exercise some demons against Tom Brady. Doesn't matter if it's New England or if it's Tampa, that Tom Brady's had his number over the years. But as we start to wrap things up, do you have any shout-outs you want to give to, anything you want to promote, and where can people find you on social media if you have that?
Man, well, first off, thank you for having me, Earl. It's been almost 8 years since we worked together at the Daily Times. You know, you were a staff writer. Me, I was a lowly intern trying to crack jokes towards Ryan and Sean and them. You guys are probably like, what is this kid doing? Oh, my gosh. He kind of knows how to write. He kind of has a personality. I don't know. But shout out to you and, you know, what you're doing. You know, shout out to your wife. I know you guys are, expecting your first child. That's always exciting. So shout out to my wife, Cassandra. Love you, baby. Shout out to my children, Izzy, Lily, and my unborn daughter, whose name I will shout out when she is born. And as far as where you can follow me on Twitter at D_R Cabrera. That's all lowercase. I do have a podcast. It's called, I was kind of toying with the name a little bit. At first, it was 4-minute drill, but then the episodes end up being longer than 4 minutes. So now it's just called the Unnamed Sports Podcast with David Cabrera. I post episodes weekly on Podbean, and I try to post the link on my Facebook and Twitter page. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And we'll see if Washington can keep it going or if they just continue to pour salt into the wounds of longtime Washington fans.